From Passion and Virtues by St. Paisios of Mount Athos, Spiritual Counsels, Volume 5. The Poison of Envy. Envy is one of the greatest passions. Yerenda, I am jealous of a certain sister. I know which sister you are jealous of, but I have learned that she is also jealous of you. I will pray that both of you become jealous for the zealous prophet Elijah, and that he may dispel your jealousness and grant you a portion of his design, zealousness. Amen. Yerenda, whenever I feel envious, I try to reason things out. Wouldn't it be better if you tried not to get jealous to begin with? Envy is such a foolish vice. All it takes for one to overcome it is a bit of thought. It doesn't require great struggles and a lot of asceticism, because it is a passion of the soul. Be careful, you must not let the passion of envy master you, for it is one of the greatest passions. Have you any idea what a person is capable of doing if he is led by jealousy? It leads to malice and calumny can do more harm than malice. Yerenda, what does envy consist of? You mean, what does it not consist of? It consists of pride, egotism, self-love. It contains neither a shred of love nor naturally of humility. In other words, Yerenda, if one is envious, is it impossible for him to love? Of course it is impossible. It is not possible for one to feel envy and love at the same time. And even if one feels a little love, such love is not pure, because it is full of his own self. Envy contaminates love and goodness, just like a dead mouse contaminates all the oil in a container after it's fallen into it. Yerenda, I think that I am envious because inwardly I do not feel fulfilled. How can you feel fulfilled when you want everything for yourself? But what happens when I desire something that is given to another sister? God has commanded, "Thou shalt not covet anything that is thy neighbor's." How can we covet something that belongs to another? Are we not to observe even the basic commandments of God? If not, then life becomes hell. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away by his own lust and incited, as we are reminded by St. James, the brother of the Lord. These same desires will torment the souls even in hell. And if God brings us into paradise, and we haven't been delivered of envy, even there we will not find any consolation, because we will still have the same irrational desires. Envy poisons the abundant love of a woman. Yerenda, why is the passion of envy stronger in women than in men? Since a woman by nature has an abundance of goodness and love, the devil attacks her more. He tosses venomous jealousy at her and poisons her love. Once her love is poisoned and becomes malevolent, then instead of being a bee, a woman becomes a hornet and exceeds the grit of a man. You see, while it is enough for a man to avoid and not see the person he envies, it is not enough for a woman, whom God created to have such a heart, that the person she envies be taken out of her sight, but that person be taken out for good. In other words, she wants to be certain the job is complete. I have become very fearful of malevolence, which, when coupled with jealousy and stubbornness, can reach demonic levels. At that point, people don't even regard God, and become true little devils themselves. Not only do they torment others, they torment themselves as well, and will continue to do so eternally, God forbid, unless they get rid of envy. A woman ought to be especially careful about envy. She must remove her own self from her love in order to keep her abundant love pure. How can this be done, Yerenda? It can be done by rising above the daily trifles and cultivating lavendia and spiritual nobility, a sense of sacrifice. The antidote for envy is spiritual nobility, but unfortunately there are few who possess it. Envy weakens us. Yarenda, I don't have any stamina. You are envious, and that is why you have no stamina. When one is in the grip of envy, he feels miserable. He can't eat or sleep, so he loses weight and also loses his nerve. Of course, to others he may appear to be a great ascetic. Yarenda, I feel very spiritually deficient and feeble. You have many strengths, but you are frittering them away through your foolish jealousness. Although you are a noble person, you torment yourself as if you were some unfortunate street urchin. You could have gone far in the spiritual life if you had not been stuck on envy. Be careful, because envy can sap all of your physical and spiritual strengths, which you could otherwise have offered as a sacrifice to God. If you had done away with your envy, even your prayer would have had strength. Envy weakens us spiritually. Why do you think that the apostles, having received such authority from Christ and having expelled other demons, were not able to expel the demon from the possessed child? It was because they were envious of the 3 disciples, Peter, James, and John, whom Jesus had taken to Mount Tabor for his transfiguration. Christ could have taken all of the disciples, but not all of them had the capacity yet to receive the mystery, so he took only the 3 who had greater capacity. Did you think he did not love the other disciples as well, or that he loved John more than the others? No, but John loved Christ more than the other disciples loved him, which is why he was better able to understand the love of Christ. He had greater capacity. He had a bigger battery. Do you see how envy distanced the grace of God from the other disciples, rendering them incapable of healing the possessed child? This is why Christ said, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you?" He who buries his own gifts of God's grace and envies the gifts of others. Yarenda, how can an envious person be helped to overcome his jealousness? If he becomes aware of the gifts with which God has endowed him and fully utilizes them, then he will stop being envious and his life will be paradise. Many people take no account of their own gifts. They see only the gifts of others and are overcome by envy. They view themselves as having been wronged or lesser and end up tormenting themselves, making their lives miserable. They say to themselves, "Why should he have those gifts and not I?" But you see, he has his own gifts, and you have others. Do you remember Cain and Abel? Cain did not seek out his own gifts, but looked upon the gifts of Abel, which is how he cultivated malicious envy towards his brother. Then he turned against God, and from envy went on to murder. Yet he might have had more and greater blessings than Abel. Yarenda, how can one, seeing the gifts of others, not be envious, but rejoice? One can rejoice over the gifts of others if he utilizes his own gifts instead of burying them. For years now, at this monastery, I have been watching a very devoted sister who, in spite of having a lovely voice, does not want to chant. Since she buries her own gifts and refuses to chant, she gets distressed when she hears the chanting of the other sister, whose voice is not very good. You see, she does not realize that although God has given her a better voice, she does not cultivate it. This is why I say that each person should look to see if they actually have within themselves the very same blessing they envy in someone else, or perhaps God has given them a different one. You see, God is not unjust to anyone. He has given each person a unique gift which will help him with his spiritual progress. Just as no 2 people are exactly alike, one person's gift is not the same as the other's. Have you ever noticed the wild peas you planted over there by the fence? They may all be derived from one root, but each one has a different color, and one is lovelier than the other. Still, they are not envious of another. Each one enjoys its own color. Do you see the birds too? Each has his own grace, his own song. Each person should find the gift that God has given him and praise the benevolent God, not with pride or hypocrisy, but with humility, by recognizing that he has not measured up to God's blessings and should do so in the future. Yet I am envious of some sisters because they have certain gifts which I do not have. God has given you so many gifts, and yet you are envious of the gifts of others? You remind me of the daughter of the confectionery in Konitsa. Every day her father would give her a small piece of syrupy cake, not wanting to give her a larger one, which would have made her stomach hurt. And she was envious of the other children in school who were eating large pieces of cornbread. "Look at their large pieces of cake, while my father only gives me a tiny one," she would say. You see, she envied the dry cornbread, even though she had an entire confectionery store to herself and could eat moist, syrupy cake. In the same way, you do not appreciate the great gifts God has given you, but are envious of the gifts of others. We should not be ungrateful to God, our good Father, who has endowed all creatures with various gifts, because he knows what each one of us needs, so that we will not be harmed. The good kind of envy. Yet I am envious of a sister because I see that she has humility, simplicity, and devotion. I will pray that she die. Do you want her to die? No, Yerenda. I may be envious of the positive traits she has, but by no means do I want anything bad to happen to her. I don't wish that the other person has no virtues. I only wish that I too could have some. Well then, let's split the virtues in two so you can each have a half. Don't worry, you have the good kind of envy. You covet earnestly the best gifts. In other words, Yarenda, is there such a thing as good envy? Yes, when one is envious for the good the others have, and at the same time rejoices in their progress, then such envy is good. However, if one is upset when he sees someone else progressing, or if one is secretly pleased by another's hardship, then that kind of envy is bad. Let's assume that you are envious of a sister because she has a good voice and chants beautifully. If you hear that her throat is sore and she cannot chant and you feel joy, this means that your envy is malevolent. It is poisonous. But if you feel sorrow and worry over her, this indicates that your envy has no malice. You simply wish that you too could chant well. Yarenda, how can I acquire the good kind of envy? We shall call you Oreo Zili. Try to purify the envy within so it can become an emulous desire. In other words, rejoice over the progress the sister is making and struggle to emulate her. This will transform you spiritually, and the grace of God will remain within you, affording you heavenly exaltation from this life on. Yarenda, can one who has the good kind of envy reach the point of it becoming the bad kind? Of course he can, if he does not work on himself diligently. One ought to be very careful and attentive. Yarenda, I am not always sure if what I feel for another sister's progress is the good kind of envy or the bad kind. You should ask yourself, if this sister performed a miracle, what would you feel? Or ask, if the sister fell into temptation and fell in the estimation of others, would I be glad or sad? You will know if the kind of envy you have is good or bad from your answers. But tell me, if you learn that the sister you envy has become lazy, does not work on her spiritual life, and instead puts on the tape recorder to say the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, would you be upset? Yes, of course I would be upset. But on the other hand, I don't think I would be too happy if I should hear that she is constantly progressing. Look, if you're having trouble walking, you should rejoice, and not be upset about the sister who is able to run. If you want to make spiritual progress, you should rejoice when the sisters are progressing, and beseech God that they continue to progress, and that you too may achieve their progress. When I was a novice in the Cenobitic monastery, there was another novice about my age who had attained a great spiritual state. His face was radiant. He was a model novice, an exemplar in everything he did, very well disciplined and of great violence. He was very devout, and even the older monks would rise out of respect when he passed by them. I benefited more from that novice than from all the books I had read up until that time, because he was a living example. One time my heart was aching. It just so happened that this brother was passing by my cell, and I asked him to pray for me. The moment he left, the pain was gone. Another time, a possessed person had come to us asking the fathers to heal him. The elder said to the novice, "Go and pray for this person to be delivered from the demon." And he responded, "May Christ expel the demon through your prayers, Father." As soon as the novice walked away, the demon was expelled. Such was the boldness he had before God. He had attained such a spiritual condition. So I prayed that this novice attain the heights of the great saint whose name he had, and that I in turn attain the height of the blessed novice. Once you do the same, you will clearly see the action of God. When a person gets to the point of rejoicing over the progress of others, then Christ will grant him all the progress of the others, so that he will rejoice as much as all of them, and then naturally both his progress and his joy will be immense.